Good evening. Today's program is being recorded. Any views expressed in this webinar are for general educational purposes only and do not represent any official views or positions of the sponsoring or presenters organizations. We look forward to your questions at the end of the program. Please submit them anytime during using the Q&A section. Greetings and welcome to today's educational program, Quality Management Tools that Improve the Process at Home, Community, and Work by Robin Kelly. This is your moderator, Shobha Mittal with ASQ Quality Management Division. Today, we have the distinct pleasure of hearing from Robin Kelly. Please join me in welcoming her. Robin is the mother of 4 daughters and grandmother of 10, blessed to be able to reach an interdependent community of leaders and potential leaders, parents, families, and the general public, teaching how to build leadership, relationship, friendship, followership, and fellowship. One person, one business, one household at a time. Over 35 years of quality improvement and quality management experience, engineering and re-engineering processes, ensuring program compliance, providing instruction in various aspects of business management, and supporting business operations. Robin's credentials include PhD program participant in organizational leadership, TCSPP, Masters in Public Management from Carnegie Mellon University, Certified in Healthcare Compliance, Certified Manager of Quality and Organizational Excellence, Certified Investigator by PA Department of Human Services, proprietor of R-Wordness, a small minority women's business enterprise certified with the state of Pennsylvania, and Yo Unity Ministries Outreach, a PA-based nonprofit. Licensed and ordained minister, Bethlehem Baptist Church, McKeesport, Pennsylvania, Pastor Erlene Coleman and First Pilgrim Baptist Church, Camden Day Bishop Dorina Miles. Robin is currently working as an independent consultant and with Wesley Family Services, a 5013C PA-based nonprofit, as the Vice President of Research, Quality, and Compliance. And so, without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce Robin Kelly. Robin, the floor is yours.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction, Shobha, and thank you for causing me to feel relaxed during this presentation. I feel blessed and privileged to be able to share some helpful tips on quality tools used in the home, the community, and the workplace. I just want to reshare some of my background to drive home a point that the tools and techniques used in quality engineering can be very versatile. Because my background has been really in the production, mechanical, technical field. I've worked in quality for over 35 years with ASQ when it was called American Society for Quality Control. I've worked for Westinghouse Air Brake Company testing and repairing freight train brakes. As a supervisor, material handling for General Motors and their automobile stamping plant. And then I took my first quality associated job with Westinghouse Electric Corporation in Pittsburgh, PA, as a quality engineer. And that was back in the mid-'80s. I was privileged in this position to travel across the United States and Canada, assuring that vendors and contractors possess the processes and programs that could meet or exceed specified requirements that were related to nuclear and other energy systems. I've utilized the quality engineering experience in other areas of employment outside of the box as a contracts administrator and social entrepreneur, and now leading the quality charge for my current employer. What I then considered the most uncommon use of the quality tools was my work in outreach ministry with youth and families through my own nonprofit. I now know that quality was ordained from the beginning of time when God created the heavens and the earth. I view quality as a gift. So for those of you on this webinar, in whatever quality capacity you may be in, be thankful for your gift. It is my pleasure to share how I've used a couple of well-known quality tools outside of the quality engineering box. as an innovative approach to help families as well as organizational leadership improve processes. I will provide you with some real-life experiences in the use of a few tools and techniques like conducting assessments and evaluations to obtain needed information, actively listening to the voice of the customer or listening to the impactful voice of the people who are important to you and who affect your everyday life like a family member or a neighbor. Using the cause and effect diagram as a method of data collection to draw conclusions and make informed decisions in human services. Knowing when an outcome or output may be good enough, and understanding the symptoms because they are important considerations in treating the problem. There are many books and articles related to quality management tools used in industries like education, leadership, healthcare, production. However, what about the use in self-help, raising and rearing a family, for community growth and development? Therefore, this presentation is not a highly technical one. It's one that I hope might make a difference in your everyday life. So when I first saw this picture, I immediately thought of the impact of COVID on everything, primarily the family dynamic. By April and May of 2020, COVID protocols caused for families to come together in unprecedented ways. Some of you may have been impacted by school classrooms emptying out with working from home while monitoring the education of your children. The family was together 24/7 and left to be creative with how to best deal with home office, home classroom, while digesting terms like quarantine, isolation, and social distance. Well, this picture was suggestive of a family unit that is not so much unlike any complex system where components interact to influence another component's behavior. I had to laugh when I saw this because it looks like whatever is going on works for them. All of it coming together in one harmonious unit. The image also caused me to see more of a need to speak on the increased opportunity for the use of quality management tools to impact some system concentrating one member, one element, one entity at a time. Yes, even the family. You know why? Because we're all different. Behavioral science and social science are very difficult forms of science. I'm not a professional clinician in either of these areas, yet understand that the behavior of human beings is quite different than the attributes of non-living objects like freight train brakes, car parts fresh off assembly lines, electrical and mechanical systems. Accounting for similarities and removing variability in human behavior is not a simple task. My research while working on my PhD evolved around quality management in non-traditional areas like the corner religion-based center and the megachurch. I wrote papers on Deming and how his discussion of management in his book, Out of the Crisis, paints a picture of supervision, not engaging with the workers. It depicts a management that doesn't catch problems until too late in the process. Not that any presenting problems could not be handled, but the cost to potentially remediate or correct the action is increased at that point. Deming's studies demonstrated that driving out variability leads to increased efficiencies. Its framework for transformation includes interdependent processes. Quality should occur in every step of a process, causing everyone to take responsibility for driving improvement. This depiction of different is true interdependence. In the behavioral and social science field of working with individuals and families experiencing some dilemma, sometimes the problem doesn't surface until late in the process. And the variability can be staggering because no two people are alike. Research shows this to be true even when observing the behavior of identical twins. When it comes to behavior, Psychologists rely a great deal on self-report in one form or another. For instance, when you go for a medical checkup, you're given an assessment. Some information can be collected using tools like a scale for your weight, a stethoscope for your blood pressure or heart rate, thermometer for your temperature, and maybe even some form of sampling to check for other health levels. Information is provided through qualitative analysis gathered from conversation with questions like, what brings you here today? How are you feeling? How did that make you feel? Tell me more about that. Can you describe the pain on a scale of 1 to 5? Also, achieving continuity in meaning and even the same word can be a challenge. Like when someone says they were subjected to a family fight. This may mean a loud disagreement to one person and an actual physical altercation to another. We know that the term quality is a personal perception. So let's look at a case study that resulted from a no-cost 4-week program I developed for use in the courts called CORT, C-O-R-T, the acronym for Continuous Opportunities to Reach Teens. The program was developed for use in working with adjudicated teens in my community through a nonprofit that I founded, Unity Ministries Outreach. And the CORT program was tested using teens who were brought into the local magistrate courts to appear before a magisterial district judge. Now, this is considered what's called a minor court in the state of Pennsylvania. There is no jury. The program operated on the premise that assessment was a necessary element in the improvement process. Active listening is a very important aspect of data collection. And the collection of data, both qualitative and quantitative analysis, is key to decision making. And the program had to involve family input. So I'll begin with the case study. Christy Jones, the name is changed to protect those who actually participated in this real life case study. She was assigned to continuous opportunities to reach teens with the outreach through the local district magistrate court system in her community. The magistrate's ruling was for an alternative sentence. This meant that instead of Christy or her parents paying a fine for her behavior that caused her to be in court, that she could participate in a court-appointed alternative. Christy was offered an opportunity to work with the outreach as her alternative. This is where she would be introduced to 2 process improvement tools and techniques. 2 of the main methods used with the participant in the programs were self-assessment and cause and effect diagramming. This was not the first time Christy and her mother appeared in court, but it apparently was the last chance for corrective measures before a taxing financial penalty was invoked. An outreach advocate introduced and explained the programs on the court appearance to the youth and their parent or guardian. It was explained that the parent or guardian must attend the very first session and an exit program review. Christy and her mom were both required to enter into a signed agreement for participation that outlined the understanding of the program involvement. The court-appointed advocate also left the hearing with 2 points that were noted. Christy was an honor roll student during the previous school year, and her mother stated to the judge that somehow Christy started hanging out with the wrong crowd, a group of girls that weren't her normal friends. During the first court program meeting with Christy and her mom, it was uncovered through conversation that Ms. Jones is raising Christy alone as a single parent and works every day to provide for herself and her daughter at a minimum wage job. Christy and her mom were even given a written assignment that addressed life quality related to self and family to complete. they were given an assessment, the same assessment, and it was actually a self-assessment. It was specific to Christy. However, it was used to capture the information from a different perspective. Christy and her mom were to complete the assessment and focus the answers toward Christy, how Christy would answer, as an opportunity to assess perspectives on the same information about the same individual from the point of view of someone who knew the person well. Seeing how the child and the parent answered the question was very telling. The assessment tool used was to help the court participant to hopefully, honestly consider their personal experiences and how the experience or lack thereof may impact behavior and stir thoughts for improvement opportunities. A self-assessment considers the outcomes and outputs of certain behaviors. It creates an opportunity for an honest reflection. It stimulates thoughts for personal growth. It helps in problem solving and decision making. Identifies areas of self-improvement or overall improvement, and it brings out personal beliefs and personal biases. Over the course of the next 2 court program sessions, the cause and effect exercise was introduced to a small cohort of court participants. Because the participants had a common effect, the activity was done as a group exercise. They all received a court sentence to attend the program due to some infraction and to keep them from having to pay a monetary penalty. As we worked through the group exercise using the Fishbone cause and effect diagram, the participants were to think about their own situation that caused them to be court appointed. Each one was given a colored sticky note, a different color for each person. They were asked to write down a few words as to why they landed in court. One sticky note for each thought was to be recorded. They were challenged to ask themselves a question. So if you're familiar with the cause and effect diagram, you may already guess what that question was. Put that answer in the chat for me. If you put in the chat why, you're right. The participating teams were asked to respond in a few words on a new note and continue to ask themselves why until they could move on to the next thought. Once the group was finished, the notes were put on the diagram in 4 main categories. Man, method, materials, and money. And I've also used the 4 P words. They may be more common to human service workers. And that was productivity, process, people, policy, and procedures. But when you're working outside of the normal environment of cause and effect and you want to use this as a tool, then you can modify those headers to best fit your situation. This slide shows Christy's results, only her results. One night, Christy left her house after 11 p.m. Why? To get some snacks from the store across the street that stays open 24/7. She was approached by the police and issued a citation for breaking a city-invoked 11 p.m. curfew for minors, and that was those under 18. The police escorted her home, wanting to touch base with her parents, but learned that she was home alone. Why? Because her mom worked nights. Christy couldn't get to sleep. Why? She said that she was hearing scary scratching noises, like the sound of birds trying to get into her room. Now, Christy also had been cited by the local school district for continued truancy and received a citation requiring her to appear in court with a parent. This restarted the why process for her. She was continuously truant because she couldn't sleep and stayed up late. Why? Because she heard scary scratching noises in her room. And once the scratching noises begin, Christy cannot go back to sleep or get to sleep. The noises make her feel as if birds are actually getting inside the house. She then calls people that she knows who may also be up at 2 a.m. These are her new friends. And they talk on the phone until daylight. Christy's new friends help her survive the fearful ordeal. But Christy is now too tired to make it to school on time, if at all. Being issued a citation to appear in court with the potential of monetary fines is considered her consequence. Both citations, violating a curfew and continuous truancy, were wrapped into one charge and a hefty fine, which unfortunately would fall on the parent to pay restitution. Parental fine in this situation will not solve the problem. In examining the circumstances, we went through the differences in common and special causes. And common and special causes, that's a whole other presentation. So let's talk about the program results, and keep in mind that although why questions were asked, as in a typical cause and effect exercise, the why not questions are also discussed during the closeout with Christy's mom to help reach a potential solution. It was suggested that Christy's mom request a shift change or seek daytime employment elsewhere. She said no, and she was asked, why not? It was suggested that a mutually agreed upon house guest or relative be invited to stay over the nights that mom worked. But mom said no and was asked, why not? It was also suggested that mom get the house checked out to determine the cause of the scratching noise. And although mom was not opposed, she was also not willing to commit to make it happen. And she was asked, why not? I intently listened to mom during the closeout session as we discussed the end results, looking over the initial assessment, the cause and effect illustration, the whys and the why nots. Assessment in this case revealed that mom knew little about the daughter, having only 20% of the responses that they had agreed. Showing mom the results of the cause and effect exercise helped her to see at least some contributory causes and maybe even some direct causes, but possibly not the root cause. After going over the information, the result was that Christy's mom flat out refused to make any changes with regard to her job. She was feeling too appreciated by her coworkers and was finally satisfied with the job, as she stated, for the first time in my life. She would not allow anyone in her home during the hours that she worked, and she was not allowing Christy to stay with anyone else, even her older sibling. Why not? Because the family had secrets that involved abuse, and it caused mom not to trust anyone. This was information that mom at the time did not want to share. And although willing to investigate the cause behind the scratching noises, Christy's mom did not want to chance that this may cost her more than she could afford to pay. Now, Christy, on the other hand, she wanted to stay with her older sister on the nights that her mother worked and to go to school from her sister's house. However, her sister had a live-in boyfriend and they had a small child. So remember that there is history of abuse in the family, so her mom would not agree. Christy's behavior exhibited symptoms. The dynamic in Christy's family were also signs of a bigger problem. And treating the symptom would be to pay the fine and completing the program. However, the problem, truancy, and violating a community curfew have not been fully addressed. Christy was asked by her mother to understand. And her mom asked Christy to give her more time. Although everyone was willing to share in the data collection process, no one was willing to compromise to fix the problem. And now the program was over. The participant had completed as agreed. The court fines were dropped as a result. And this is one of those times when a human service provider may have to be okay with that outcome and move on. So I ask you, what do you see as a potential means for driving out variability, knowing that behavior change is often the hardest part of reducing variation? What do you see as a potential means for driving out variability, knowing that behavior change is often the hardest part of reducing variation? And you can put that in the chat. If you have something on your mind that you think can be a potential to drive out variability in this particular behavior situation, please share that. So let's pause and ask the question. What would make this situation better? Maybe not the most optimal outcome for this case, yet being okay with providing some support to the family dynamic by eliminating the fine, which would have been a financial burden on the parent, just because of the behavior that the child exhibited. When we return to court, we return with a positive outcome, which to the court would be program completion. However, a positive outcome to the court CORT program would not just be completing the program. It would also be to achieve improvement in the personal behaviors and reduce recidivism. I can share one more tool in my box, and maybe you already have put this in the chat. I can share this as a tool and as a means to drive out variation in a behavioral care case and speak to Deming's studies about how driving out variability leads to increased efficiencies. It is a standard, and I'll call it house rules. These can be classroom protocols or a work policy procedure manual. Drilling down into specific cases where variation in behavior exists often reveals that standards were not followed. If there are no clear, sometimes documented, identified standards, then the argument can be made that whatever outcome resulted should have also been expected. So here's a couple of takeaways. With a little modification, quality tools like inspection through observation, cause and effect, and even written standards, whether an actual measurement device, a written care plan, or a work breakdown process flow, will not only work at work, it can be a benefit to use these tools at home or any place you desire to see an improvement. I have a genuine love for using the tools of my trade and quality to help people and families in their everyday walking around life issues. My work and studies over time led me to my current employer, Wesley Family Services, where I proudly serve as Vice President, Research, Quality, and Compliance, and I oversee the management of risk and safety, records, and HIPAA privacy, and also the organization's accreditation process. I have learned over these last 35 years that sometimes we settle for okay more often than we'd like to admit. I want to thank you for your time and attention, and hopefully you have questions or would like to share a quality tool idea that has worked outside of the box for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Robin, for that informative and very interesting talk. I do have a couple of questions that has come through. So one I have is, can you please repeat the 4 service categories for the Fishbone?
Yes. The P categories?
I think that, because when you mentioned the human services and then you were saying the P categories, yes.
Yes, they were productivity, people, process, and policy and procedure. And typically, when I've done these in my environment with the Human Service Organization, I find that these categories best suit some of the results that come out from the cause and effect or root cause analysis.
Okay, so the next question I have is, if night time it's a factor of environment, why we don't consider it as the fifth why?
It could be. Depends on the question that you ask, if I'm understanding the question, depending on the questions that you ask or that they ask themselves. I mean, when we do the cause and effect analysis and we're challenged to ask those questions, why, that could have been one of those why questions. And if the person that asked that question, if that didn't clarify, please put back in the chat and I'd be happy to further answer the question if I can.
Then I have a comment. Did I miss something? I'm not clear that the fishbone diagram identified the root cause.
No, that's good. It did not identify the root cause. So we have to consider too that sometimes when we go through these situations in human service organizations, we may not know the root cause. We might find out the contributory causes. We might look at direct causes, but sometimes we don't know what that root cause may be because that could be something from a family dynamic that's not shared during services. So that was a good observation. Great question.
And in addition to that is, there's another follow-up to that is, and it doesn't seem that any corrective action was implemented.
And you're right about that too, as far as human service and social service areas would be concerned. So when we talk about, what can be done, especially in that environment. So in that test base that was in the court, remember that the conclusion of the program itself was just, I should say, the result. What the court wanted to see was that the person finished the program. If I could have taken this program on for another 4 weeks, we could have worked on those opportunities to see results. And in the human service areas, that's part of, I would think, the plan is what do you want the end result to look like, and that would be how you would work toward those kind of cause analysis if you were using them on your job in the human service area.
And then we have
I'm sorry, Shirley, you use that same type of diagram or that same type of thought process while you're building your treatment plan.
So the next question is, does any program like COAT exist elsewhere, for example, in California?
I don't know. I would have to check to see if those types of programs did exist. I know that there are, in my studies have learned that there are some programs that exist that are court alternatives and even run by youth. So their youth are almost like the jury, and they help to mitigate those problems with other youth. So you can look in your area and see. And if you need to maybe know where to start, when you email me or contact me, I can help you with that.
Sure. And then the next one is, changing behavior usually require cultural changes. Culture change takes time. What time frame are participants given to show some improvements in behavior?
So I heard all the front part about the change takes time. And what was the last piece?
What time frame are participants given to show some improvement in the behavior?
So for that particular program, it was a 4-week session. It was the first week was the self-assessment and the discussion with the parent. The next 2 weeks, we worked out the cause and effect and had a discussion. And the 4th week was the wrap up with the parent. Keeping in mind that the the result of this was, or I should say, the reason why the program was put into place was the thought of the parent having to pay a fine for the child's behavior, knowing that paying the fine was not going to solve the problem. We were able to stay in the lives of some of the individuals through the request of their parents and provide them with resources. So with one of the court participants, we were able to connect with a mentoring agency for the person who was a young man, and the father felt like because of their work schedule, they wanted to give the young man an opportunity to maybe go fishing with a mentor. And so we contacted the local mentoring agency and was able to make the connection as a big brother. And I don't know if you have heard of those programs, a big brother, big sister.
Next question we have. Can you provide an example of something in human services where you were able to identify a root cause and you got a behavior change you were trying to achieve?
Yes. So this particular example that I can think of is more related to an issue that we had learned that had taken place. And the root cause was actually done without the individual. It was done with the people who were providing services to the person or to the family. And we had gone back through information and had the people who were actually involved in treatment there to work on the root cause analysis, and it looked quite different than the fishbone diagram. It was more set up. It was set up in a different manner. It really pulled out different causes, different effects, and was able to look at how to best design the treatment for the individual that would help them in the processes of treatment. So in that way, we were able as a group to come together and work on a true root cause, and I say true root cause analysis because it really had a lot of different factors associated with it. It was more technical, and it didn't involve the client participation. And when I use the tools with clients, depending on their ages, I try to be as simplified as possible.
So we have the next question, Robin. Fishbone headers affinity diagram may help you arrive at the categorization. Downside requires pre-work and case consideration review for affinity. So I don't know if it's a question or a comment. I think it's more of a comment.
So read it again.
Fishbone headers affinity diagram may help you arrive at the categorizations. Downside requires pre-work and case consolidation review for affinity.
Okay.
All right, so I have another question, which is, can this be considered a result of more than one root causes? And if so, can they be qualified or weighted?
So I'm going to ask you to repeat that, Shoba, only because my mind was still on the affinity.
Yes, I will.
Question.
Sure. So the question is, can this be considered a result of more than one root causes? And if so, can they be quantified or weighted?
So I think depending on what it was, it probably could be weighted and it could be quantified. There is an additional story that goes along with this individual, because for this case, the parent did want me to continue working through the outreach with the individual past the court session. So, we were able to find a true root cause, and it did have to do with the fact in the family dynamic that there was abuse. And I did find out later what that was, but only because it was revealed through a crisis that the family went through, or was going through in my presence. So, you know, some of the things that when you consider dealing with families and working in the family, it is not something that may be uncovered at that time, and even going through the process, you might have to do it a couple times in maybe a couple of different ways.
And I have another one which says, are there follow-ups after the program?
Only if the individual wanted to follow up. That was one of the downsides to it. You know, you work with these families, and sometimes in a group, like that root cause was done in a group with the people being able to put their answers on sticky notes. And sometimes the program wasn't successful, meaning that people didn't want to complete it. They ended up having to pay the fine, not out of choice, but because the child just didn't want to cooperate.
The next question is, how is success of the program measured? Do you have any KPIs or metrics that demonstrate the success of this program? What do they look like?
So one of the ways that I was able to do this to really tell the success of the court program was to look at recidivism. So we were able to see if that particular family or that particular child would go back to court. So the magistrate's office, and I've worked with 3 different ones in 3 different communities, they were able to collect this information and provided it to me so that I would know who ended up coming back to court and who was able to stay out of the court system. And same with the school, that even though they may not have ended up in court due to continuous truancy or some other infraction that would take place, that they would give me the information that caused them to maybe present to a counselor that this individual still needed to have some type of services in their life, and they would be provided with additional resources. And I'd like to say too that the alternative sentencing program that was held in the court wasn't all citation based on school or curfew. It was really based on the fact that these young people were caught in situations that if they were 21, they would not have been in court for, like smoking in school or drinking, being found drinking in school. Not that that wouldn't have been a problem, but I'm just saying that there were other reasons why individuals were appointed to the program.
Then I have a comment which says, Fishbone using participant input drawbacks is what they are willing to review. My impression was she was lonely and needed some form of social connectivity to keep her sanity when being afraid to be alone. Any comment on that?
Yeah, well, one of the things, I appreciate the questions. Thank you. I think that they're good questions. One of the things that I found from that particular instance was in the court, it was talked about her friends being new friends, and we learned that these were the friends that were new to her were because of the fact that they were able to stay up late. They had, I won't say little discipline, but less discipline when it came to their home life. And this was a group that kind of stuck together, the other girls that were in the example. So from the loneliness situation, it was more that she was looking for somebody to talk with that time of night because she was afraid. And she knew that this particular group of young ladies were allowed to be up that late.
I have another comment, Robin, which is an interesting comment, is that just some comments, thoughts, very great presentation to show how things can be solved using quality tools. I try to use these same tool as my marriage was failing. This is a great discovery process, yet needs all folks to work through the solutions.
I love that comment. Thank you, whoever that was, for sharing. I think that sometimes we have these tools in our box as resources at our jobs and don't think to use them in our home life. And I think that these really do work. And as simplified as that root cause was that I've demonstrated today, I've worked with some very complex ones that would really be given back to the individual or be tools for therapists to help individuals. And I just think that these tools, although they may look technical and complicated, really can be modified so that we can use them in our everyday life. So thank you for sharing that.
Another question, has the court program undergone any continuous improvement activities, and if so, what are they?
So I can tell you that we no longer have the court program. But I can tell you also that there was one improvement that the court program had undergone, and that was at a time when it was asked to expand. And so in expanding, we learned that the 4 weeks was not enough, but 8 weeks, which we thought would be better suited, and that way we could work on some of the results that had come out of the root cause analysis, was too long. So, just looking at time adjustment was one of the improvements that came out of it. So for the person that had commented about being able to use some of the information to put in improvements, we were able to do that with a longer period of time, but really had to make that adjustment from 4 to 6 weeks and not 4 to 8 weeks.
Did you consider the scary noises to really be the red herring?
That's a good question. Maybe a contributory?
Okay. I think, Robin, we have taken up most of the questions. There are comments pouring in, being very appreciative of the presentation and the takeaways from that, and how, the hardcore quality tools can be applied in everyday life. So it was a great presentation. So thank you for that, Robin.
Thank you. And I want to thank those who were on the presentation.